Well, welcome back to our series on conformity. And reminds me of a quote from John F. Kennedy, where he said that conformity are the chains that hold back humanity. And ultimately, I think he's right, although we have to remember that conformity helps us to have a certain idea of what life is all about, what the culture is all about around us. Oh, by the way, the word culture, if you take out the root word, it's cult. And you're thinking, wait a minute, what? Culture? It just means a way people see life, a specific type of way of seeing life. So when you think of cults, you think of like people waving tambourines around and chanting and that sort of thing. But ultimately, all cultures have a specific way of looking at life. They have a specific way of behaving, a specific way of seeing how they should function within the human context. So I just want to throw that out there. Anyway, what I'd like to talk about right now is a researcher known as Stanley Milgram. And he did a really fantastic study that has been replicated. It's been probably one of the most famous studies ever done in psychology. So anyway, how he did this was he was trying to figure out what would turn people to do things that were really nasty to other people. You might think of such things as like, I just visited Auschwitz, for instance, and you think to yourself, how could people do this to other people? And I think a lot of times you start trying to rationalize and think, these were just evil people that were doing these kinds of things. The same would be true of gulags in the Soviet Union, where they would torture and kill millions of people. Pol Pot's killing fields, where like half the population of Cambodia perished, and these kinds of things. Milgram wanted to see how people behave when the responsibility is taken from them and put on someone else, an authority figure. All right, what happens? And would regular people be capable of doing nasty things if they felt like they were being told to by an authority figure? So what he did was this. You have an experiment where you would have one individual, forgive the stick figure, he would be in a lab coat. So he looked official. He'd have a name tag. He's a researcher. So automatically, when you see someone in a lab coat, name tag, and so that's a person of authority. It's like their uniform. Then you had a person who looked just like a regular Joe off the street. Looked like he was just regular. He was part of the experiment. He would go back in a room and sit down, and it would look like he had electrodes hooked up to him, that convey electrical impulses. And then you would bring in the person who was actually the test subject, who thought he was part of the research, but he was just brought in because they were going to see what would happen if he would give a questionnaire to this individual, and then when he gets something wrong on the questionnaire, it's supposed to be about memory, he would get an electrical shock. And it was set to where it was like really mild, but each time, the machine was fake, okay? It looked real, but it was fake. But it would look like, first shock would be just like a mild, no big deal, static electricity type thing off your shirt. Then it would go on all the way to lethal, XXX, I think they had it. I don't remember which I think it was. But this was the lethal area, where if you gave this shock, it would say, warning, this could kill someone. And of course, this person would get questions wrong on purpose because they weren't really getting shocked. They would just go, ah, you just shocked me. Please stop this. And he would actually say that. The researcher would say, please continue. And usually what would happen with most people, now some of them just went right ahead. Now most of the time though, people would actually say, whoa, wait a minute. He's in pain. Is this really valid? Should we do this? And the researcher, Mr. Authority, would say, you're not responsible. Let's just continue with the experiment. We need to do this. And I assume full authority. I assume all responsibility. So if something goes wrong, fine. I'm the one to blame, not you. So the person usually would go on. And this person eventually would just stop responding. He'd pretend like, he's passed out or dead. And sometimes the person would actually say, is this person dead in there? And they'd be like, the researcher would say, that experiment must continue. Did he answer the question? Well, no, he's not responding at all. Give him the shock. And what was found then was majority of people would go to the dangerous area, lethal. And some people would just say, screw you, I'm not going to do this. Okay, there was a number of people that would. There was like I said, majority of people were like, I don't know about this, but most of them would actually go through when the researcher said, do it. And so ultimately, these were not, sociopath, psychopathic type people, but they were being told by the authority figure what to do. And so what's been talked about a lot after these experiments is, would a person, under the right circumstances, being told by someone like in a policeman's uniform or military that they're supposed to do something, and it's by someone who is above them, okay? I mean, it doesn't even have to be a uniform. It could just be how we perceive that person. Jim Jones, the cult leader. I know I've already said that everyone's gone, but he was part of the People's. He had formed the People's Temple, and they had taken a group of people, many of them highly educated, and gone down to Guyana to set up their commune. And then this was in the 70s, and then a congressman came down because one of his constituents was talking about, I don't know what they're doing with my daughter down there or something. So he goes down to visit with his entourage, and they get killed by the people there, the security, under the orders of Jim Jones. And then Jim Jones tells his people, like 1,000 of them, okay, it's time to, we're going to drink this Kool-Aid here, and everyone knew it's poison. And most of the people, not all, some of them ran into the woods, but most of them went ahead, drank it, gave it to their kids, and they died out there because they were conforming to what his wishes were. They were projecting their desires onto him. He's the one responsible. He's a man of God. We're supposed to have a special connection to God. So he says, do this, they do it. And they die. And this can be seen in military situations where a commanding officer will say, this was seen in World War II, where maybe you took a bunch of prisoners. Let's say you captured a bunch of Germans in a major battle. And the commanding officer would say, well, we need to proceed, kill them. And, the soldier would be like, wait a minute, they've surrendered. I mean, they're disarmed. And we're supposed to, under the rules, we're supposed to, take them to into captivity. And the commanding officer would say, nope, kill them. And they did. These kinds of things happen in wars. But it's not that the people want to do it. They feel like, okay, well, this person in authority has told me I need to do it. They represent a bigger authority. In this case, I guess it would be the military. even though the military had different rules, but then this person says, shoot the prisoners. Okay, you shoot the prisoners. These kind of, you see these atrocities in wars take place. And then you might interview. They might interview someone who was in a war, be it like, I don't know, Afghanistan, or maybe somewhere in Africa, or the World War II in Japan and China and so forth. And these people sometimes will break down and say, oh, I did things I really should not have done, but I was commanded to. I was supposed to do it. And they do it because they're following an authority figure. So it goes right back to this idea that maybe it makes you feel like, no, this is wrong. But he or she says, no, you're not responsible for this. I am. And then you can do things that you wouldn't feel like you could ever do. And so Milgram's experiment illustrates just how powerful the desire to obey and to conform when you have someone above you who says you should do it will be. Now, had this, one last note, if this person had not had the uniform and had just come in and dressed like a regular person, and it was just like, yeah, I'm doing this for a psychology experiment, it's for my PhD exit project, for a master's or PhD in university, I'll bet you hardly anyone would have gone ahead and done the shocking. Because they'd have been like, oh yeah, but he's a student just like I am. He might be a little ahead, but he has no authority. So I don't think they would have done it. And so that's a very important point then, is that if we feel like someone is not a credible source of power, then we won't do it. If you'd have 1,000 people that just randomly, and Jim Jones gets up and says, I'm a man of God and I have a special connection to Jesus. In fact, I am. Maybe he says he is Jesus. And then says, drink the Kool-Aid, it's poison. And no one would do it. It's just, the people have to have a sense that this person is someone who has some authority granted to them by some sort of entity. So anyway, that's a little, that pretty much wraps up a presentation on the Milgram experiments. I would encourage you to look them up and find out more. And there's some really good interviews with Stanley Milgram about his experiments. Take care now.